If multitasking doesn't exist, then what are all those 911 operators really doing? I'm Dave Crenshaw, and it's time to pick Dave's brain. This week's question comes from Jen in Rosemount, Minnesota. She asks, I work in emergency dispatch. People who perform well in this position have the ability to both type and listen to the conversation at the same time. If multitasking is something that people are unable to do, then what are these effective 911 dispatchers doing? And what can we do to find the best candidates for the position? Thank you. This is an interesting question, Jen. Not the first time I've heard it, because this is a common issue. There are many people who are in positions that require them to do multiple things at the same time. First of all, let's make the distinction between multitasking, which really doesn't exist, and switch tasking, which does. Switch tasking is when you are trying to perform multiple active tasks at the same time. Because your brain cannot handle them all at once, what you're really doing is switching rapidly back and forth. What these 911 dispatchers are doing is switch tasking. Now, does that mean that that's bad? No, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that there is going to be a cost. Whenever you switch from one thing to something else, there is always a cost. There are three costs, in fact. Things take longer, you make more mistakes, and stress levels increase. I'm sure you've seen that on the operator floor. So, if they're doing that, how can they still be effective? Well, I have found that it is true that some people incur less switching costs than others. For instance, I have found that in general, women incur less switching cost than men. Now, they're still going to incur the cost. Things are going to take longer, they're going to make mistakes, and their stress levels are going to increase. But you want to find people who have the minimum possible impact of those switches. So, what does this mean for your question about hiring and finding the best 911 dispatchers? First, we want to look for people who incur the least amount of switching cost. Everyone is going to have these problems. But because some have less, you're going to want to develop some aptitude tests in the hiring process to see which people can handle the most amount of stress and the most amount of switches. And second, when it comes to the training programs that you have available, you want to teach people over and over through repetition to get used to performing these multiple things at the same time. Now, of course, the ideal is that we never switch task, but it's not practical. Some of us occasionally are going to have to do that, and if it's a recurring part of your job, you're going to have to train yourself to incur the least amount of switching cost possible. Fascinating question, Jen. And if you've got a fascinating question for me, or even just a practical question for me, all you need to do is go to davecrenshaw.com/ask, and I'll be there to answer your question. I look forward to seeing what you have for me.